Good morning. It is 9 a.m. Tuesday, January 31st. We're here for our regular scheduled board meeting, and all three commissioners are present, the administrator and the clerk of the board. So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask you all please to rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is the approval of the vouchers.
We have one voucher today. Move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $1,411,716.95 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by two representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll move down next to the consent agenda. There are 9 items on the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent as presented, 9 items.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. I'd like discussion on item number 8, and that is the Mid-Columbia Library appointing Jesse Wagnon. And I don't have any objection to this because I've done some research on my own, but I would just like to ask that in this, we would have a resume put in here so we learn more about the person before we appoint them to the library, where so many of our kids today are being influenced by readers that come to the libraries. So with that, there's been a motion and a second for the approval of the 9 items on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Move down to public comment. Is there anybody in the room for public comment or anybody on the phone?
Mr. Chairman, we do have someone on the phone.
Go ahead, speaker, you have 3 minutes.
Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, the video's delayed, so anyway, I hope everybody's paying attention to what's going on with the vaccine injuries all across the world and the United States. And it's getting so alarming with all the deaths, especially athletes all over the world dropping dead, over 1,000, and the increase in excess deaths all over the place. You look at Europe or Britain, the United States. What I want is, I would like to see the county establish a county board of inquiry of all vaccine injuries in this county and make the information publicly available. Speaking really and truly from the heart, immunity from felony homicide does not exist. You can't legalize immunity for murder. Now, what's happened is, since the release of Pfizer's documents where they knew, before they ever released this, and you can download it yourself, there were 1,290 severe adverse side effects that they knew of, and then they went ahead and put it out on the street, and everybody from the President of the United States to the CDC to all these other people that gather around Bill Gates, who's becoming a billionaire out of this, they're all getting paid well, and people are dying. So I'd like to see this county get a county board of inquiry for all vax injuries, and I would also like to have the county take steps forward to end and ban all these mRNA vaccines, and also demand early prevention with already existing drugs. This whole, people now call it the pandemic. As I mentioned earlier, back in October, Bill Gates and company and friends, WHO, Tedros, all met, and they planned for a catastrophic contagion exercise. Now, all these exercises are done and practiced, but that's their plan, and it actually happens. They did one, Event 201, before we had the outbreak. Then they got this catastrophic contagion exercise that kills 80% of all children. And if you want to know where we are in the entire scenario, you would really get informed fast. You would go on the web and look up a document that they published. It's called A Futuristic Scenario for Public Health Risk Communicators by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Now, when you go to that document, you find out, well, wow, what we've been through was already planned out, even down to how they're going to respond with news and who's going to say what. If you replace the fictitious actors in their report with names like Bill Gates, Fauci, whoever the other people are with the CDC, Lewinsky, and all those people, it's coming out exactly on cue.
Sir,
Now,
your 3 minutes are up, and we thank you very much for your public comment.
all right, get busy and look into it, especially that futuristic scenario. Look
Thank
it
you.
up.
Thank
You'll
you,
find
sir.
it. Right.
Anybody else?
Got another call.
Another call.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hey, this is LaWanda Hatch. I'm Franklin County out here in the county, precinct 100. And I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Davidson. We are so honored to have you as the administrator. I've been wanting to call in for a few weeks, just have been crazy busy, but I know so many people that view the meetings have reached out to me and told me what an amazing job that you're doing. And it's just so nice. You have a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge that you bring to the table, and that is very much needed in our county. And we really, really appreciate you just so very much. And the gentleman that just spoke, I think had some good points. I know there's some things that the county cannot address, but the health board, maybe that is a great idea, that people can call into the health board with this particular shot if they feel like they have any injuries from it. I know my nephew, after the first shot, started having heart problems, and he's in great shape. He was a paratrooper, young man for the military, so in the Army. So I just think that our county is doing so much better. I'm just so grateful for all the hard work that our commissioners are doing. One thing that I am concerned about is, and I know that Mr. Davidson brings a lot of knowledge to this, is that anytime we hire a company, give them a contract, or hire a person, I believe you have to post that out in the public to give others the opportunity that it can't be done, in an emergency. Oh, we've got to hire my friends because we're in an emergency now. That there is proper way to do that. And I can say that when I was at the bridal show this January, on January 8th at the track, there were a lot of people complaining about the fact that CCG Public House now has a kind of a monopoly there at the track, because now they're not only providing all the food services, but they are also managing it. So that creates a conflict. And I hope that you all really consider that when you to do that. I just know so many food vendors that have been trying to get into the track for years that actually do live in Pasco or Franklin County, and they haven't been able to. And even though CG Public House it's local to the Tri-Cities, they are not in Franklin County. So anyhow, have a great day, and thank you again.
Thank you. Any other callers? Anybody in the audience for public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Davidson?
Mr. Chairman, last week I had a meeting with Shirley Jones with the Commissioner's Office, so with McKinstry, to get an update on all the various work that's being done out at the HAPO Center. Later in the week, on Friday, I actually had a meeting with Commissioner Mullen and Benton County Commissioner Alvarez and Deputy Administrator of Benton County, Matt Rasmussen, about all of our bi-county operations. And I think that completes meetings with all three commissioners now with a counterpart from Benton County, and puts us in a good place to have the joint county meeting. And basically, we're looking for consensus. Right now, we have the 23rd is marked as a possible day with Benton County, and they're wanting to know if you gentlemen would be able to meet with Benton County Board on that day. That is the same day we have a 7 o'clock meeting at the elementary school up in Connell concerning the fire ambulance issue that we've been talking about here for the last few weeks. So the 23rd at 2:30 p.m. at the Benton County Admin Building. Do we have a consensus with the board that day would work?
Works for me.
Works for me.
I believe it works for me, and I believe Karen sent an electronic invite that we probably all responded to, haven't we, Karen?
Not everybody did.
Okay, all right.
So that's good, okay.
Yep.
Okay, and we did have 100% replies about the 7 o'clock meeting. That's why I didn't bring that up. I know that's confirmed for 7 o'clock at night. And then to continue, yesterday I had a meeting with Michelle Andrews with the Civil Service Commission. So that's my updates.
Commissioner Peck?
So you had the Executive Committee of the Benton Franklin Council of Governments meeting last week. I suppose highlights from that were that we've updated all the bylaws for the Council of Government. We've created new structure and new opportunities for representatives from different local governments to participate, including from Franklin County. There will likely be new elections for leadership positions in that organization in the next 60 days or so, if anybody is inclined or interested. Had the Washington State Association of Counties legislative update on Friday. On Tuesday morning of last week, I spoke to Leadership Tri-Cities, their annual class on county government and local government, highlighted the RCWs that are most applicable to what we do, mostly Chapter 36, explained the various structures of local government and federal government, state government, how we're a little different from most. How we're an extension of state government, highlighted some of the current legislation that is pending that could, I believe, harm counties. Spoke to the issue of unfunded mandates, where the legislature levies requirements on the county but doesn't send those mandates with funding, and how that's an increasingly more difficult challenge for county government, and the fact that our funding mechanisms are capped while the unfunded mandates from the state continue, and that simply can't go on much longer before counties will become bankrupt, and that's starting to happen with some of the very small counties in the state. All three of us had the Board of Health meeting last Wednesday, in which we hired a new health officer for the Benton Franklin Health District, which has been announced publicly, I understand. And this week I'll be in Olympia Wednesday through Friday for the Legislative Steering Committee of the State Association of Counties, meetings with legislators over on the Hill, and would offer that if there are issues that you want pursued or supported, please provide those to the county administrator so he can share them with me, so as to avoid a quorum of the board meeting and discussing outside of a public venue. Thanks.
Commissioner Mullen?
So last week, we had the Pasco Chamber of Commerce. Topics were the Pasco School District bond, the letter in support of the Scout Energy position, and just I'll also mention that on February 8th at 3 p.m. is the ribbon cutting for the Prime Dental. Also had the Washington Highways Users Federation 2023 weekly legislative briefing update. Also met with the Visit Tri-Cities board meeting. Also the Benton Franklin Board of Health, where we had interviews for the health officer position to replace the vacancy created by Dr. Amy Pearson's leaving. We selected a candidate and are currently in the process of securing this individual for the position. Also decided the two commissioners from each county will start the interviews for the 1152 committee selection. We are still waiting on a reply from the Indian Health Commission as far as who their representative on that board will be. Also had a recovery center project meeting, as Dwayne had mentioned, with Matt Rasmussen and Commissioner Alvarez. The 1/10 of 1% mental health tax has raised approximately $1.7 million for an account total roughly $4 million. These funds are designated for services only, not for capital projects, not to say that they can't be used for a lease. Also want to mention the Wilson House is going to be coming up shortly here for sale auction. It's located in historic downtown Pasco at 224 North 7th Avenue. A lot of history in that house. It's pretty unique. And so the bidding is going to open Wednesday, February 8th, which will be here shortly, and the auction ends Wednesday, February 15th. So if anybody has any interest in a historical house in right downtown Pasco here, it's a beautiful home on an extra large lot. I would definitely look it up on Booker's auction site. And that concludes my update for this week. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mullen. I too had the Board of Health. You've already got all the information on that we hired a new health doctor. Housing Authority, and want to report that there was an article of the Wilson House in the Connell Graphic. So if you want to know more about that, there's an article in the Connell Graphic on the Wilson House and the proceedings of that. Also, I'd like to welcome our newest employee, Shirley Stone, who has joined the administration office, and like to welcome her. Thank you for coming, and we're helping us out. All right, with that, we'll move down and regular item of business, 2023 cost of living. Mr. Davidson.
Human Resource.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just an annual event, basically, where we look at the increases, COLA increases for the non-reps, also known as non-BARGs here in the county. And the estimated fiscal impact is $270,000 current expense, which is the main operating fund. It's our recommendation that, that we move forward with 5% to the non-reps.
Okay. You got anything you want to add, Mr. Davidson?
No, I appreciate everybody's patience as we're coming through this. We've been working through a lot of issues with bargaining units and others, but it's encourage you to pass this today.
Okay. And we have a resolution of 2023-035. So with that, is there any discussion?
So, Mr. Davidson, I think historically, and this would be a question for HR as well, haven't we settled our COLA negotiations with our represented groups represented by union, and then looked backward in terms of creating parity with our non-BARGs? And if we've already gone through that process, then that would be helpful to know as well. A shorter question might be, do we have any pending negotiation with represented groups on COLAs?
We were going to go over this during closed session later, right?
Yes. So I just want to make a note that there are a couple of pending issues on the labor front, and I've handed out to the commissioners in advance and to Dwayne a summary of what all of those issues are. which we'll go over in a minute. Typically, I want to add one thing, though. Typically, the non-BARGs receive their COLA first, and that's followed by the represented people, so.
So perhaps it's advanced age, but I remember it distinctly differently in previous years,
Here. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you're negotiating with represented groups and you've already put on the table what we're doing for our non-BARG groups, that's signaling.
That
And we
is.
have historically negotiated in good faith with our represented groups, and then the result of those represented negotiated numbers, we then seek to give parity for our non-BARGs.
And the reverse has been true in the environments that I've been in. Parity was a kind of a cultural thing in the agencies. Whatever the non-BARGs got, the representative folks could pretty much expect to get within range. So it is a cultural thing wherever you go.
Okay, well, it looks like it's historically been done differently here than what you're accustomed to. I would suggest to the board that we certainly want to ensure that our non-BARGs are not disadvantaged by the fact that they're not represented by union representation, but that it might be wise for us to conclude our negotiations with our union represented groups, and then based on how those negotiations come out, ensure that our non-BARGs get at least equal treatment.
Thank you.
Move for approval of Resolution 2023-035.
I'll second. There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-035. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I would just offer that I'm certainly in favor of ensuring that our non-BARG employees get at least equal treatment, and this has been historic practice in the county, and unless there is some reason that it is beneficial to the people of Franklin County and our represented employees, or some reason that we would do these in a reverse order, then I'm certainly happy to hear that. It's already been discussed that we're going to have negotiations or discussions sometime in this meeting today in closed session. So there's clearly questions about how our represented employees are going to be treated. And since we have a lot more latitude with COLAs that we give to our non-BARGs and have the ability to match what we provide for our bargaining units, it seems natural to do it in that order. But you know, if the board chooses to do it in the reverse order, then so be it.
Mr. Davidson.
I'm obviously the newcomer here, so I don't have the history. So I'm only going off of what I've been told. I was actually told that actually the non-BARGs was normally done before so I'd be interested to know what the actual history is. It seems like we should be able to verify that. And if you want to pull this until we have made that determination, but
Well, it may in fact
we're
be.
establishing that as a matter of fact, and I've just been told it's contrary to that, and I wasn't here, don't have firsthand knowledge, so I'll have to attest, I do not know, but I've been told that the non-BARGs have waited longer than they've ever had before, and that was normally communicated before. Maybe we see our chief civil deputies here. Hate to put you on the spot, but could you shed some light on what?
And while we're doing that, Mr. Davidson, I'd be interested in knowing the source. The source I'm offering is that I've been sitting here for 15 years doing this, and it may be that some years non-BARGs got them first, and it may be some years that union folks got them first. Irrespective of that, we have more flexibility with the COLAs that we give non-BARGs, and by doing that after we've negotiated the others. Imagine if we give the non-BARGs a certain percentage COLA, and then our negotiations come out that it's vastly different than what we gave our non-BARGs. Yes, we could come back and redo it, but it seems to make sense to do the one over which we have the most flexibility second.
I think we've done it both ways in the past. I am getting a lot of anxiety-ridden non-bargs because they're used to having some sort of COLA by January 1. I wouldn't say typically, but I think more often than not was announced in maybe November or December what the non-barg COLA increase was going to be, and it was in effect in January. So now we're facing higher medical costs and all this, and obviously higher cost of living on everything, and so therefore our employees are essentially being paid less today than they were a year ago, and so they are very anxious to get this COLA and very upset that they haven't gotten it yet.
So I would offer that the board should publicly declare its intent that once we approve a COLA, that it is in fact intended to begin on the 1st of January, so there's no lost revenue there. Employees' actual compensation has not gone down.
No,
They're-
it's just not spreading as far, so it's essentially, it
Right,
feels like
I-
a pay
I
cut,
understand
but not-
inflation.
Not that it actually hasn't.
Right,
Yes,
right.
that
So I
was not
understand
my intent that
inflation.
it
And
went
it-
down.
and if the board, for those reasons, chooses to go ahead and approve the COLA for the non-bargs, then, again, so be it. It's not that big a deal, but historically, the ability to make sure that our non-bargs got as much as our negotiated union people has always been very important to them. And if they knew that it was retroactive, I think they might like to have that opportunity. But either way,
I
it'll
think-
work.
Yeah, I think them knowing that it is for certain retroactive January 1 would assuage a lot of the anxiety right now. I mean, we certainly could adjust it later. We could certainly set this down to have after we've had the closed session hearings, so you can have the updates on the union stuff
Well, that
we can't address in public.
that would seem to be.
Couple different options you guys can
yeah.
take today.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Davidson, do you have anything you want to add? Mr. Mullen?
I believe that the non-bargs, are anxious to get their COLA, but in all fairness and being equitable to everyone, I think we should wait till next week until we get a settlement out of the union. And like I said, it is retroactive, so not to keep them waiting, but I think one more week might present a more fair and equitable solution.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps as a compromise, we could simply agree to table this matter until after the agenda item today, in which will be in closed session. Perhaps there will be information that comes out of that will make more clear whether it's appropriate to take action on it today or next week.
Well, currently, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Commissioner Mullen, you want to withdraw your motion?
Yeah, I only second it just so we could have discussion on it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the motion's been withdrawn, and since we do have more time, I'd like to know the historical of the order of non-bargs and bargs. This would be interesting to know, because it's been all over the board here so far in the meeting that historically it's always been done one way, and then now it's both ways. So I'd like to know what the historical is. So that has been tabled. We'll move down
Mr.
to...
Chairman, the suggestion was to table it to a time certain, which is after the closed session today. So we'd revisit this today.
Well, Mr. Mullen suggested we wait a week.
Well, that's fine.
It'll be retroactive to the January 1, so they recognize the fact that there will be some calmness put over the courthouse, that it is going to happen, but
That's fine. We don't use Robert's rules, so a table motion doesn't matter, so we can proceed.
we'll move down to administration office business, code of conduct. Mr. Davidson?
This is a matter of, that we've, with the suggestion, we had kind of a concurrence with the board when I talked about this issue last, that Ann McFarland was definitely an expert in parliamentarian and has conducted various seminars that a couple of our commissioners have attended at least. And so we've contacted her about her services to help us develop some rules of order. Yesterday, I had a good phone call with her personally, with Karen at our office, and asked her about the practicality of developing some rules of order that derive from the Roberts Rules of Order, but be in a little bit simpler, more condensed format related to a county commission operation. She concurred that she said that it was a very wise thing to do. She would be very amenable to helping us do that. She thought it would be something that would be relatively quick to be able to do if you gentlemen would offer suggestions on looking at the template that we provided, and then working with Karen and I, we will communicate those to Ann and see if we can find a Roberts Rules that kind of fits and complies with the intent, and develop a condensed Roberts Rule, a condensed revised, if you will, Roberts Rules that would be applicable to this board. She said that that's very widely practiced around Washington State. Matter of fact, we did a quick poll, Karen did through the Clerks Association of counties, and found out, I can't remember the exact, it was like 12 we got back or something, and 10 of them said that they didn't do formal Roberts Rules of Order, that they did something, revised like she's suggesting. So I think we could actually get this done rather quickly, and she even offered that after we was all said and done, this would, of course, would come with a fee. She would even put a seminar on for the county with the county commissioners and elected officials, if you wanted it to be, where she would go over implementation of what you just adopted. And she's a pretty excellent, renowned parliamentarian, and I think it would be beneficial to the county if we were to possibly do something like that, but we can talk about that part of it a little bit later. So,
Okay.
I'd like to talk about it now.
okay.
So, Ms. McFarland, as you have stated, is a recognized expert. She has a business, I think it's called Jurassic Parliament. She's retained by the state, I believe, or State Association of Counties, maybe more precisely, to go to conferences and teach counties about adopting and using Robert's Rules of Order. Myself and Commissioner Mullen have sat in her classes at the annual conferences. So I found it interesting some time ago, and again today, when it was noted that she allegedly is more in favor of these localized rules than adopting Robert's Rules, but that's fine. I can ask her about that when she's actually here. She's recommending we take this course or this path, which of course would be contracting with her company to develop these rules and then to provide this this training. I'm curious, Mr. Davidson, do we have you to thank for the genesis of this idea of going this way, or has this come from other sources? Is this your idea?
No, we basically had a consensus of this board. We talked about it before. I remember Commissioner Mullen suggested that we do something that was based upon like revised Robert's Rules. So I got a consensus of the board that they would like to have something like this. And quite frankly, if you want my personal opinion, as county administrator, I thought it was a good idea myself, and it was, but I hate to just, if you just go back and look at previous commissioner meetings, I think that there is.
Yeah, no, I have, but perhaps I missed it. I'll go look again.
So
Or maybe actually it'd be easier for me if you just send me a note with the date of that meeting, and then I'll review it. And, if in fact we had consensus to go to this modified form, I'll be the first one to come into a public meeting and say, oops, my bad, I missed it, you were right. I got no problem doing that. So just offline, maybe you could just let me know when
But
that was.
I would like to disagree that I don't think as county administrator, if I thought it might be something that we could benefit, I could initiate conversations
Oh,
about
sure.
developing something like
Sure,
this.
sure.
Irregardless if I did, which I did, but even if I didn't have your consent, because I think it would be something to benefit the board. So I don't know why we have to go through that exercise when I think I can do that as a county administrator anyway.
Well, we can do them in parallel. I don't think that you are in a position to be contracting or negotiating with a provider of a service and bringing in a recommendation that we do something when you're contracting with that entity. But that's an aside.
There's no contract in
No,
front.
no, no,
There's no contract.
but I understand. You're promoting and recommending that we do that. Point is simply that there have been complaints from board members, not myself, till now or till recently, that certain folks aren't getting information. Well, this train moved quite a ways down the track. Multiple conversations with the contractor, some discussion about having her come in and provide summarized rules of order, not using Robert's Rules of Order. And I would have appreciated having been more in that loop more recently, but that's fine.
Well, I'll interrupt here because I remember the meeting and I brought up McFarland
Right?
and you said, and McFarland. And
Yes.
this is when we had the discussion.
Yes.
And this is when Commissioner Mullen and I both agreed that we engage with Ms. McFarland, see if we
Yes.
can get some guidelines.
Absolutely.
And that's where we went.
And
That's
everything
not,
we've
that's
done.
not consensus. Maybe that's the distinction.
But the most important thing is that everything that we've done to this point has not cost the county, nor will we cost the county any money until a contract was actually presented. So I'm not incurring any cost here without the county's acknowledgement. Before I would actually engage in anything that required a contract compensating her, I would bring that to the board before that started.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I found the distinction here. We apparently have a different view of what constitutes consensus, and we can move on, and we can have Ms. McFarland, if that's what the majority of the board directs, we can have that conversation. It's still a little lost to me why simply adopting Robert's rules is problematic, but perhaps it's the avoidance of the requirement for a parliamentarian. So it'll be interesting to see if any adopted summarized rules would require a parliamentarian, someone to know those rules and affirm when things are appropriate and when they're not. That's one of the complaints I've heard from organizations that have adopted summarized situations, is that you don't have an independent parliamentarian who rules on motions and matters. And in a three-member board, that can be the difference between a decision and not, when the power is vested in one commissioner to make those decisions. That's why they have parliamentarians for Robert's Rules. But I think we all, and especially myself, have taken plenty of time on this. And I think I've expressed my point of view, and it looks like, not hearing any objection from Commissioner Mullen, the majority of the board wants to go down this path, so I'll respect that, and we'll move ahead.
Well, it's my opinion that we follow Robert's Rules as a guideline, and that we don't commit ourselves to following them as adopted set of rules. As you mentioned, both you and I took her, Ann McFarland's class on Robert's Rules, and I think there was a discrepancy as what you interpreted from her and what I did, and so maybe it would just clear the air if we did bring her in. It's my understanding she has a very reasonable rate, and that this could be cleared up in a matter of probably a 3-hour session, which would be less than $300. But
If that's the will of the majority of the board, then I will support it and I will participate.
all right.
I do appreciate your observation that, you can simply adopt Robert's Rules and then follow them as best you're able. You don't have to formally adopt them. You can just have an agreement that we'll use Robert's rules. I will acknowledge that the Robert's Rules expectation of a neutral parliamentarian to rule on matters where the board members don't agree can be challenging, because we don't have a professional parliamentarian to provide that. People who are on the other side of this issue would say, yes, but you have 3 elected commissioners who have equal voice in matters. And when you delegate the decision-making on a Robert's Rules issue, absent a parliamentarian, you delegate that authority, say, to the chairman. You've now created an imbalance in a representation between the 3 districts in the county because of the additional authority to rule on these matters. So if we adopt Robert's Rules, but not formally, use them as a guide, to me, that's very similar to what you're talking about with Ms. McFarland and some locally derived rules. Whichever path the majority of the board votes to go down, I will participate so as to ensure that people in my district are fairly represented, and I'll cooperate with the process. It'll be interesting to see in the abbreviated process if there is an open door for individual commissioners to add specific additional rules beyond Ms. McFarland's recommendation that the individual commissioners may want to have, and whether or not there's parity. If you're able to add all the rules that you want, and I'm able to add all the rules that I want, you can see the train that can create. So look forward to the conversation.
The
Thank
chair
you.
recognizes the clerk of the board.
This came about due to me, and the lack of respect in this area, whether or not you have rules, but the lack of respect. And Robert's Rules isn't everything. Olympia uses Reed's Rules. Why don't they use Robert's Rules? We have come before the board, Dwayne and I, and Keith and I, to get something so that we can have organization in this group, that one person doesn't take over the conversation continually, that those who are speaking to this podium will be addressed and looked at and acknowledged, and various other things. I am beyond my patience with trying to get a group together to be kind to one another, to be cordial, to be respectful. And I have asked time and time again through the years to have something come before the board. It does not need to be Robert's Rules. But I would like for each commissioner and the administrator to put forth what they think is best. We've tried, I have tried, to bring that forth to you, and nothing has been done. All I hear is arguments of, we have to adopt Robert's Rules. No, we don't. We don't have to adopt any rules if we had manners in this group. Now, how you go forward, I don't care. But I hope you go forward remembering kindness to one another, to your constituents that you look up to, that pay your pay. And that you come together with an agreement and work on this. I don't know what else I can do. And I hope you will do your part. Thank you.
So with that, I'd just like to add that I also have taken Ann McFarland's classes years ago when I first became a commissioner. So I'm not out of the loop from taking her classes, and I'm in agreement that we engage with Ann McFarland and create our own meeting guidelines. Now, I also recognize here code of conduct. Mr. Davidson, you want to elaborate on the code of conduct? What is the code of conduct?
The code of conduct would be an agreed upon code of conduct with the three county commissioners agreeing to the conduct inside and outside, as it doesn't relates to the actual rules of the meeting, but just in general, what you would normally see in a code of conduct for proper decorum, representation, the county in matters and things like that. And so it's just basically thrown out there that we could adopt it as twofold, but we haven't even started really working on that yet. So as we go through this, I'd like to share those ideas with you in the future also, but not really ready to offer anything to that matter quite as of yet.
Excellent. I think they're both great ideas, and I encourage that we do get together with Ann McFarland and set some guidelines for our meetings. Next, we have the Horse Heaven Hills Wind Farm letter.
Chairman, you've been provided that letter. I thank Shirley Jones with my office. She's been attending the various work group sessions related to the wind farms on my behalf, which I'm very appreciative of, and has taken notes and compiled those in this position letter related to the Horse Heaven Wind Project. I hope that you can support this basic letter that is a formal opposition to the Horse Heaven Wind Project, which is summarized in the 2 pages of examples of why within the letter. I also want to say before you take action, well, no, I'll do it if I can offer additional comment after you actually take action on this.
I trust that all the commissioners have a chance to review and look this over.
I've read the draft letter in the read-aheads. I take it that is the most current.
We did have a couple of different versions out there, and so I wanted to make sure that you have the most current version has all 3 board members' signatures on the bottom.
As I looked through the letter, I didn't
Or
see...
a place for all 3, a spot for all 3 board members, I should say. Sorry about that.
Is this brainstorm session 1/12/23 going to accommodate the letter? Where it lists off fugitive dust, dust particle monitoring standards, goes through the whole list. Will that accompany this letter?
No.
It will
No,
not.
it's just a
Oh,
position
just the letter,
Yeah.
okay. Because in here...
There's no attachments to the letter.
In here, it has no mention of the massive graveyards of the blades that are being buried, and I don't know how environmentalist that can be, that can be. So with that, do we have consensus from the commissioners to, even though this is not in our county, to sign this letter of objection?
I'm going to abstain from voting on it. I don't want there to be perceived conflict of interest because of my business dealings with transportation of the windmills. But I just would like to add, though, that as a property owner, I just want to make sure that their voice is heard. It's kind of like buying a winning lottery ticket and not being able to cash it, because there's so many people against it, and I agree. I mean, I don't think windmills are the answer, and I don't think they're environmentally friendly, but someone needs to take a look at it from the property owner's eyesight and say, hey, you know, I've supported this community for years, and now that I have an opportunity to make quite a bit of profit on my property, having people oppose it. And as a property owner, I think that there should be that consideration if there's that many people against it, then it, I don't know how they would ever compensate these people for their loss of revenue. But just something to consider. If you owned the property and you had the chance to make a substantial amount of money off of that sale of your property, and you might have a different outlook on it. But with that being said, I'm just going to abstain. Thank you.
Commissioner Mullen, I wonder if you'd share a little bit more on, you said something about, it almost sounded as if you were suggesting a potential conflict of interest over transportation of wind project components. Did I get that right?
So me and my wife own a business where we do the financing for the transportation of the windmill blades.
Okay, yeah.
In all honesty, if they went somewhere else, it would actually benefit me more because the travel would be further. So,
Well, I'm aware of the business, and I thought that was perhaps the connection, and your choice whether you recuse or abstain. This would be a place where it would be helpful for all of us to have local rules or Robert's rules or something that articulates when you can speak to the pros and cons of an issue and still abstain from voting. It gets a little gray in there, so just want to highlight that this is the time when rules would be useful. But I want to acknowledge your integrity and your candor in pointing that out and refraining, or in this case abstaining from voting, is appropriate. And I thank you for making that acknowledgement. I've worked for a company that built, at the time I was working for them, wind projects and continues to today. I've been a strong supporter of renewable energy projects when they made sense. Usually that's hydro. Frankly, even now, decades later, after working in that industry, I still don't see wind and solar as being good trade-offs for the economy or for the environment. So I guess I would add to that the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council that still exists today and is intended as a one-stop shopping place for all of the permitting in the state, so all the different state agencies can come together. That organization has gone, in my opinion, well beyond its original authorized and intended purpose, and almost has dictatorial authority on approving projects. In some cases, it appears the governor does, when he took the FSEC recommendation and approved a similar project up in Kittitas County over the objections of that county board of commissioners. So to wrap that all up, I'm a fan and a supporter of renewable energy in the form of hydro and limited others. I'm not sold on wind and solar. I think that Commissioner Didier made an excellent point about the waste stream byproduct of expired wind turbines. It's pretty astonishing, actually, when you look at it. And I'm not a fan of what FSEC has become. So for all those reasons, I'm happy to sign this letter. Thanks.
And I will also sign. So you'll have two commissioners. Next, we'll move down to the RV host contract.
Mr. Chairman, I received a revised RV host contract from our Chief Civil Deputy, and I talked to her this morning about it, and I think it needs one additional revision because of the date. These people have a rental agreement, if you will, their lot that they have enjoyed throughout time, including last month, and if we don't make this retroactive, then it would cause an issue of that they would basically owe us for a month rent. It causes issues if it isn't, and Chief Civil Deputy was amicable to me changing the date on this, and then I think I'll just put it back because it's been in front of the board before. If you don't mind, we could just put it back on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
What date is that, Mr. Davidson?
January 1st. That's when the last contract ended.
Right, so are you talking about the date in the resolution in the therefore be it resolved?
Is it not the effective date of the contract is February 1st, or does it mention that it's back to January 1st?
No, it says February 1st, effective February 1st, 2023.
I was just asking which date are you referring to?
The February 1st date. Needs to be January 1st.
The previous contract expired December 31st? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm happy just to note in a motion the corrected date, but I'm just as happy to have it come back next week as well. I'm just thinking that if the old contract has expired, every day that we continue to operate without a contract, should something happen, I would have to go to legal as to whether or not that presents any additional liability. It would seem with a contract that's expired already in place, that it might be in the county's best interest just to motion to approve and make those announced date
Well-
adjustments.
Mr. Davidson, I understand that there were some corrections that were brought in late in the week. It was Thursday. I would like to be able to review it
Cool.
because of the corrections that were brought forward and the date change. So I'd just assume that we just put it off till next week and get it right.
Okay.
So I'd note that in the previous meeting, we had a discussion about this, and staff was going to run this by legal and make these adjustments. And I found out yesterday that had not happened, so I did it. And so apologies if it was late, but that's why. But if you want to wait for a week to read them, I respect that, and thank you.
All right, we'll move down to public comment. Is there anybody for public comment? Anybody on the phone?
Yes, we do, I think.
If you would like to come to public comment, to the mic, please.
Commissioners, when the Super Bowl's held every year, neither team gets to play on their field. It has to be a neutral field. I'd make a recommendation that you think about where this upcoming bi-county commissioner meeting is being held and reconsider it being in more of a neutral location. I'd also request that all the recovery board members for Franklin County are emailed those dates and times and places, and city officials, key city officials, when that takes place, and that there's plenty of notification. And then also the electeds of this county, that they know that this bi-county commissioner meeting is occurring. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Oh, there is a phone call? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, caller.
No. Hi. Okay. So I would just like to say, first of all, that being hung up on in the middle of my comment last time when I still had some time left was a little rude. And I would just
Sir,
like an
before you get
accommodation.
started, I'd just like to say that if you use any derogatory comments, we will cut you off again.
It was not a derogatory comment.
Yes, it was.
It was a comment that you took. Hold on. Please don't argue with me right now. I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to make a public comment. It wasn't a derogatory comment. It was a comment that you cut off and edited. Here's a little lesson for the. I'm just this. Since we're going to have this, I guess a debate or a conversation. This is Clint Didier, correct?
Yes, the chairman.
Okay. You're the chairman, and you're the one that hung up the phone last week.
No, I don't
Correct?
control the phones, but
So-
I do control the meeting.
So I guess I would ask for a basic accommodation. I have a disability and I have a speech aphasia, and it takes me a little more time to speak. And I would just ask for maybe an extra moment, maybe 30 seconds or an extra minute to my 3 minutes to speak, so that I may communicate clearly and not in a misunderstood manner. I would like to be fully understood, and I would like the context to be understood. Is that a fair accommodation? I see on the history you guys you let some people speak for 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 7 minutes. So is it okay that I speak maybe for 3 or 4 full minutes? I would like to also understand that people need to understand, when you go on Franklin County's YouTube channel, there's a reason why the public comments are not turned on. because once they have them on, they can't take them off. That would be editing the conversation, same as hanging up on somebody for what you feel is derogatory. What I feel was trying to explain the abuse of a disabled individual. So, I am writing to advise you that I have reached a decision in this matter. You appointed me special deputy to ask me to review this case on behalf of Franklin County due to the ongoing professional relationship with the alleged defendant, James Raymond, Franklin County Sheriff's Officer. In a nutshell, John Sant, I am writing you, Raymond grabbed his daughter-in-law, Mrs. Raymond, the daughter-in-law of Sheriff Raymond. She and Mrs. Ty had gone to the sheriff's home in Pasco to try and negotiate a settlement for Mrs. Raymond's divorce from the sheriff's son, John Raymond, her husband. The sheriff had offered to mediate. Mrs. Raymond and Mrs. Ty physically got up and left the house. As they were walking towards their car, Mrs. Raymond's car, the sheriff, who had followed them outside, grabbed Mrs. Raymond by her hooded sweatshirt, hard enough to pull her backwards into Mrs. Ty, assaulting Mrs. Ty with Mrs. Raymond. That's not in there. That's just the reality of it. According to Mrs. Raymond, Sheriff Raymond was shouting, "I'll pay you $40,000. I'll pay you $40,000," which was the amount they had discussed paying in their divorce. The sheriff's actions by grabbing Miss Raymond's sweatshirt and hoodie and pulling her backwards to Miss Ty were wrong and in poor judgment. I'm not condoning the conduct. Well, what you have is prosecutorial discretion, and they can use that. So if you're in Franklin County and you want to pull somebody around and just grab them by their sweatshirt and slam them into another person, they don't have the right to prosecute you anymore because their own sheriff can't control himself and has a problem hitting women.
Caller, you're out of time. Thank you.
Nobody else on the phone? Anybody else for public comment?
And comment on the windmill farms, it sounds like everybody's pretty clear on the issues. In past times in reviewing the issues with hydro, which is evidently going to be reviewed again, I would encourage and maybe even ask Mr. Davidson to get you up to speed on NEPA. NEPA is the framework by which an environmental impact study is done. And even in the last EIS on the dams, they didn't do NEPA right. The Columbia Snake River Irrigators Association and private citizens carried the water from multiple counties, and they still weren't protected, and here we are. We need food, we need energy. They're the top two things that are being attacked from multiple levels, multiple agencies, and I do happen to have contacts with people that can give you a scoping tool for that, so that any county commissioner can make sure that not just the issues, but the processes are done correctly. This state has a history of just botching it. So I would like to make that recommendation to him, and Ms. Jones would be happy to meet with you. Thank you.
Mr. Davidson.
If I could add, Michelle's comments reminded me that there is a public hearing that I think would be advisable for the board to know and for the public to know by the EFSEC, which is the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, is having a meeting about the windmill project tomorrow at the Benton County Administration Building at 5 to 8 p.m. So that's tomorrow. Just want to make that public announcement.
All right, is there anybody else for public comment?
Kathy Sant, Franklin County. I'm just wanting to talk about the code of conduct. I don't know what the clerk of the board was referring to. I think you guys have done an excellent job this year. There's been no fighting. I do enjoy different points of view. I think it's healthy. I just would like the rules to be like the previous caller. If somebody's saying profanities, you can cut them off, but the time limit should be universal. Like if somebody you agree with, disagree with, whatever, it should be whatever time you agree upon with the meetings. And also, I heard that there's other counties that have different rules, and I know we have, we're not a rich county, we don't have a lot of money to, taxpayers' money to throw around. There were some other counties that have different rules. I don't know if you guys could look at those before hiring somebody else to come and decide on what rules we do. If there's other counties that have rules that work for them, maybe we can have a workshop meeting, look at those things, see where what we could adopt as our county without spending money on different things. So thank you so much.
See callers.
Is there anybody else in the room for public comment? We got a
Bond,
caller?
this moment, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, caller. You have 3 minutes.
This is I've been invited to these meetings for many years, and I've always been given the 3-minute warning, so I've never gotten more than 3 minutes. But I appreciate that we get the opportunity to speak a couple of times. And I'm glad and happy to follow the rules because it's actually more time than the school board, I think, gives you like 1 minute. So, but I wanted to just say, I wanted to point out that I've been in the Republican Party for many, many years. And Commissioner Peck was actually the chair at the end of that. And Brenda High at the time had given me the bylaws, and it has been at least since Commissioner Peck was there as the party chair, that the parliamentary authority was, as it states in our bylaws, the Roberts Rules of Order simplified and amplified. And I know according to state law, it's what the state party uses as well, simplified. And in speaking to people, I understand it's more for legal reasons than anything. Because if you're going to go strict Robert's Rules of Order where it has to be perfect, it's going to make the meetings 5 hours long. People will stop listening. People will stop attending. And it can also get you into some legal jeopardy. So we don't need a parliamentarian. The whole point of Robert's Rules of Order is to, when there is contention, and there gets contention when people don't agree, and that's good. I mean, debate is great. But that we have manners when we do that. And I just wanted to say kudos to Mrs. Millam. I thought what she stated was just spot on what so many in the county have felt. If somebody has a handicap, I think that they need to let the person know on the phone when they first call so that that is noted. People can't adjust for handicap if they don't know it's necessary. So that's just a note, in my opinion, but of course, the commissioners will figure that out. So I just wanted to say that we've had simplified and amplified Robert's Rules of Order in our party, and it's worked fantastically. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment?
You have another call? You don't have another one? Okay.
No more calls. Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we have 2 closed sessions.
Yes, request a closed session with the board pursuant to RCW 4230-140, Section 4, for contract negotiations.
And for how long?
And
10 minutes. Okay. And we don't have to declare who we need in here. So at this time, we'll recess to closed session. So how long on the execs, Jen, do you think? 15?
Do we know the RCW for that?
Dwayne, do you have it?
Yeah, I guess, I'm not aware what this executive session's for.
I don't either,
Do-
because I
Okay,
wasn't
so,
told.
are we live?
Yes.
We've come out of closed session, and at this point in time, we're going to recess into executive session for
15 minutes?
15 minutes.
But you need to state the RCW, we don't know what it is.
And the RCW being?
RCW 4230-110, Section 1, subsection I, to discuss with legal counsel litigation or potential litigation.
Okay.
I hope that's,
Is that sufficient?
Personnel matter or litigation?
It's potential litigation based on a personnel matter.
All right, okay.
All right, so at 10:21, we will recess into executive session, and we'll be out at 10:36.
Going to extend 15 or 10?
We'll go 15.
No.
15-minute extension on the same RCW in executive session. Okay, we have come out of executive session and we're back to regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the county? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.